Welcome back to the Right Wave Audio community. My name is John, and for today's video, we're finally getting around for the appropriate placement of our Polk 900 LS ceiling speakers for a 7.2.4 system that we've been aiming for over the last few years. And we're going to be armed with some basic tools, some tape, a pencil, a laser, a ruler, and a stud finder, as well as some photos I took while this room was being constructed, so I know where some danger points where we don't want to be drilling in, or there could be some pipes behind the wall board here, and we got to be careful. Of course, we can leverage a feature that we put into the room. We have a chase that runs from the front of the room all the way to the back with some entries. That's a good way for us to get at least the length, wire down the length of the room, and then we can just, the joist go this way, and so we'll get it to that right point and get to there. So wiring shouldn't be too bad. I am going to have an electrician come in and do the final wiring, but the electrician won't know where to place these. And so what I'm using for as a guide is the standard Dolby Atmos placement. I know there's a lot of school of thought around where to place your ceiling or height speakers. Some like to go more towards the Oral 3D placement. I'm going to stick with the mainstream Dolby Atmos placement. And there's some basic guidelines on what angle you should be placing these things, etc. I'm going to verify my current placement. I believe my front speakers are a little too close, but I do, for the length of the room, I have a pretty narrow room. I'd like to have the room a little wider for this length. The proportion's a little different. So we'll see what angle of measurement. I think these are lower than the 22 minimum. What they say is you should be somewhere between 22 degrees and 30 degrees off axis for that. And we're going to start very simply by finding out what the center point of the room. And I know for a fact that my center point is slightly off the visual center point, which the TV and the cabinetry has been made, is an inch off from real center of the room. But we're going to go off the visual center because that's where we're going to be sitting, and we're going to carry that center all the way back to the seated position, and that's going to be the common reference for all of these angles and everything. So we're going to go down to the other room with my ruler to find out where the actual center of this, and the easiest point to do this is at the front of the room. And because I have some jogs in the ceiling, the flattest edge to go off of is my right hand side. So I'll do my measurements from right to center and then come to where the seated position is and carry that center measurement over to the seated. You'll see how this comes together. Now at the front of the room, I've got a little piece of masking tape. I find the masking tape is a little easier when we're doing the fine-tune measurements. And you might see I actually have some blue painter tape up on the wall here already. I did some rough kind of figuring out earlier this week of where these things might go. And I was kind of eyeballing this a little bit. But now we're going to be a little more precise, albeit you don't have to be terribly precise. And again, I keep going back and referencing Audioholics, but they've done a great job again with general guidance about, there was one video that they've done in the last year, which was about how many speakers do you need in the room, and they're advocating, with 5.1, you're very close to having a very good system. If you want to do more speakers, great, but you can still achieve a lot with 5.1. They actually go on to say that when you add in the ceiling speakers, having 4 ceiling speakers is probably all you need. They even advocated, said you can even get a good experience with 2, but 4 is recommended. And beyond that, it's just icing on the cake, is at least their perspective. About part of that video, they said, you don't have to be overly precise as long as you get past the minimum distances. I think Dolby recommends at least 6 feet apart between speakers. Of course, that will vary on what you have for a room. Sometimes you have to move things closer because you have a smaller room. We have a fairly large size room. So let's start with our measurements. And we're coming over here from the right hand edge of the wall, and we're seeing that that center mark that I placed there earlier is at 75.5. And I'm using the lighter colored tape now because I can put a fine pen line on here and I can remember exactly where my center line is versus this dark tape. It's hard to know where your center line is. So now I'm going to come into the center of the room where my listening position over the ugly couch. And I've got a piece of the masking tape here. And I'm just going to carry that line through to the same 75.5 inches there. So now I know where the center of the room is. The next thing I'm going to do, I've neglected to mention that my other tool here is just some basic kite string. If I can get this, shake this loose. And I'm just going to use this as a plumb bob. I had a nice plumb bob brass designed as a plumb bob. I don't know where it is. So this will give us close enough. And I'm going to use the string holder as that. And that's, I'm trying to get to the position that I normally have here with where my ear is. So what I can do is tape this up here. And I'm trying to get now the position on the length, because we have the center, so but where is going to be the reference center for where my ear is? I only have one row of seating, so this makes the whole exercise a little easier. If you have 2-3 rows of theater seating, then you've got to make some decisions. But what I normally see is still most of the calculations or placement is done with a preference towards the front row of seating. And put this here. And I can see here that the couch now should go over a few inches this way to be on center with the speaker placement. It's a little skewed this way based on this plumb that I've set up here. And as far as the front back position of where my ear is, that's probably close enough. Well, if I lean back, here's the thing is, if I'm watching a movie, I'm not sitting straight up all the time like I'm at school. I'm relaxing and I'm laying back a little bit. So I think coming back to about here would be better. So I am going to bring this back, and I think there was a reason for these 2 blue pieces of tape when I made this kind of the rough estimate earlier. But now I'm doing it with a plumb bob. Oh, look, and that's pretty good. And it doesn't have to be exact, as we say. The main thing is we're running off of now a common reference point. So if we keep this plumb bob in place and we make all our references from there, we should be pretty good. And yeah. So what now we want to do here is from this point, we want to come out 22 degrees, 30 degrees and to validate really where these front speakers go. I think we know what's going to happen here. So the thing about what they're saying is 22 is on a horizontal plane, 22 this way or 30 this way. And as you go further away from your listening position, that distance from center gets greater. So what we'll do is if we know the distance between the plumb bob and where the speakers are, we can figure out what it should be with calculators on the computer, or go back to your old trigonometry. So we're going to measure here. Okay, we can do some subtraction here. So I can use the center speaker to hold this will be the distance from the center speaker. And I can see that I'm 154 inches, and I do apologize to international crowd who do not usually think in inches, but 154 inches, which is 12 feet, 10 inches, and off comes the grill, but we got our, so 154, and I'm going to make a note here. So there's 154 to the center speakers. So this is interesting. So at 154 inches, and we're going to come 22 degrees off axis, and that's the minimum standard. What they're saying is it should be, using a right angle calculator on the internet, and these are easy to find, we have the distance of 154, and we put the angle of 22, which is the minimum distance off axis. You come up with 62.2 inches this way, and we know that that's going to be out almost to where the phonograph is. I mean, I can mark this. That's at 22 degrees. If I was going to go 30 degrees, that's at 88 inches, and we're off the room. So we know that the speaker ideally should have been like out to there, and then matching on the other side. With the speakers on towers, I can move them. You know, the reason why I have this in is I have this doorway, and here you run into the design decisions that you have to make about, you know, really how far you can have these things. Now, of course, this is a straight line, and this is where the laser comes in. So with a laser, because this is an angle from the center, this is probably in a little bit more for 22. You know. And you can see now that is just about where it should be. So the problem is, I probably won't be able to put it here anyways, and that's why I'm not being too particular. And the reason being is this door. So this door is going to keep me from moving this speaker on the left any closer to the wall. So I could measure, so this kind of dictates the position. And generally speaking, I had a little more safety factor here, where this design element from the edge of the screen with this notch on the cabinetry is you know, the far edge of the speaker. And that lines up with where I placed the rear bookshelf speakers, right about here, in a straight line with the front speakers. And that gives us at least a good symmetry there. Now, if you go to the Dolby Atmos speaker placement guide for 7.1.4, they say put the Atmos height ceiling speakers in a straight line. So from the front, across the ceiling of the Atmos speakers, and down to the rear as a straight line from there. Others may carry those angles more precisely across. We're going to measure them to kind of see where we're at. I'd like to find out what angle we really have here. So to do that with this placement here, I'm just going to measure, and always from the center of the speaker, because that's where the center of the sound is. So if this speaker is 7 inches, we'll come 3.5 from this edge, and that's measuring 33 to this center point. So 33 here, and then we're going to measure from the front where the speaker is out to where this plumb bob is coming down. Even easier. What is the distance to the center speaker? And that's coming out. Oh, that's our 154. So it's the easiest for me to just subtract. So we know the distance from reference from the plumb bob to the center speaker is 154 inches. The distance between the front of the front speakers to the front of the center is 27. So all we have to do is subtract to know the difference. And we get our pen. So 27 is 7. So it's 127 inches from the front of the speaker to where the ear is. So with the calculator, only 14.5 degrees off center, so fairly shy from the 22 that's recommended. Well, that's what we got, but it's good to know that is the case. Of course, bringing them out from the wall makes that angle greater, so I could bring these closer to the listening position and get closer to the that 22. So using the calculator based off of the distance the speakers are from the center, and that if we wanted to fix the angle at 22, we'd have to move these forward so they're only 80 inches from the ear, and that would bring them to about here, what we measured out. Not something we're willing to do. We do know that we're kind of fixed here, that this is going to be the position from center. Not ideal, but we're going to keep that line going so it's a straight line all the way back. So we did a lot of calculations just to know where we're at, even though we're not going to follow the full guidance here. So the next thing that I'm looking at is where we're going to put the Atmos. Well, we know that it will probably be along this line. And so it's a matter of how far out from the center of the couch. For the Atmos in ceiling, what Dolby advertises is from the horizontal plane, 30 degrees at the furthest, 45 ideal, 55 degrees would be the closest position. So we're going to mark all three of those and see where they come out. And to facilitate this, actually I do find that using a laser can help here. So I'm going to move the couch back, and I'm going to use a microphone stand and try to get this set up. All right, with the couch moved back, I put a mark here too before I move the couch about where my ear height is from the ceiling, because if your ear is in different position, where you have positioned that reference point of where the ear is going to be, that's going to vary the angles out. If it's higher, then the angles are, I'm going to put a different position on the ceiling. And so with that ear position here, what I'm doing is taking a microphone stand And I guess there's other techniques to use. This is the one I'm using. And I'm going to put the pivot point of this microphone stand right where that tape is and lock that in. And then I've got this here to varying angles, plus my laser. And this isn't a really good laser, but what is good about it is it has a magnet on it. And we can see where this is on the ceiling, and I can do the back of the room, and then I can pivot this around and do the front of the room. So we'll do the front of the room first. And for this to work well, we've got to, and I'm going to move this down slightly, because I want the center of the laser to be on center with that blue tape where the ear is. And we'll want to adjust, don't go anywhere, tighten that up, adjust this bubble level, so then the laser pointer there is going in the right spot. Now we have to get the angle, so 30, 45, and 55, we want to mark out where those are. I'm using, to get the angle here, the level that's built into the iPhone. So if I go to measure and go to level, I'm going to use horizontal level, and right now without doing anything that's at 34 degrees, so would we say that 30 degrees would be the maximum we would want that out. And tighten that up. And you can see that this lines up roughly where I had the tape the last time. But I want to get this out where the others are, so let's and I will mark right where that laser is, and that's 30 degrees. Okay, and then let's see where the 45-degree position is. Again, using the phone. And that's 45 degrees. And mark that. All right, 45, 50. This 55 is slightly off. There we go. Of course, I've marked this in the center of the room. What I want to do is measure out the same distance as the speaker is. Roughly, I want to, this is the best, instead of using the laser here, 75 and a half. That's where we need to be out. All right, I marked the distance out on the rear side of this from the right wall over to the center, so I have a center line. And the reason why I had to do this, and rather than just do a straight line, because we have this jog down in the center for some pipes that go across, and this tray here is you can't just do a measure. I have to draw that distance out on both sides of that, just so we know we're getting the right distances here. And now it's getting the angle like before. The blue should be pretty close. And we'll measure here. We'll start with 55 this time. And change our I'm going to use just the dot here because I think that's going to be more precise. Okay, it's roughly 55. Let's get a piece of tape there. And that's going to be right there. Now we'll change the angle. 45. And then the last one, it's the 30-degree angle. At this point, I've got the potential distance front and back for these. And I say potential because now I got to think about what is underneath the ceiling. What do I know? Well, I've got floor joists running this way. I've got some pipes. And I know that in some cases, I've got to deal with, of course, the lamps. Can't interfere. So this mark here, this would probably be a challenge because this lamp falls just about where that 30-degree mark is in line with that speaker position. Of course, we could move out this way could be a compromise. But now I'm thinking about the other way around, and wherever I've got these entry points here, we've got an issue with the speaker placement. Let's move. So right here, I know I have pipes that run this way. And so this location here at 30 degrees out is not going to work because I've got pipes running right through the middle of that. So then that brings me, I'm looking now here, I would be past the pipes here. Then I've got the lamp, but I know there's a joist here. And I've got a photo that shows that the joist is right against there. So something around this point, it's somewhere between 45 degrees and 55 degrees, is going to be an unobstructed, my bet is when I put the template up and everything, it's going to be unobstructed. We can cut the hole it's going to fit in, and that's what we're looking for. And we need to do this symmetrically across the room. With the rear speakers, with the rear channel ceiling speakers mapped, what I'm going to do is measure the angle with the phone, and that's saying 38 degrees. And then I'm going to come around the other way here, and I'm going to maintain the 38 degree on this side, and it's just about there. So that gives us the same distance, angle distance from the seated position on each side. Well, I believe I've got all the center marks for each of these speakers in the right spot. We have them the same distance from the ear position back as well as front, and we have the same distance from center left and right. So the least will be symmetrical. They are lined up with the front and rear speakers in a straight line. And they're within the parameters for at least the angle from your ear that Dolby Atmos recommends. The last check I have is I do have the template for the Polk 900 LS speakers. Just put this up in place and just verifying that it's not going to interfere with this. We have a stud here, so if it could be a little close, we may actually, when we cut in, need to move it out an inch or whatever. I don't think that much of a difference is going to come into play that much. But this is the way I've gone about positioning the ceiling speakers. Probably the most difficult speaker placement that I've had to do. This is going in wall. Once you cut the hole, you really don't want to have to patch that and move it. So you want to get this right. You're making some assumptions the way it's going to sound. At least there's some tolerance in the way your ear perceives sound up above. It's not highly directional. What you put up front and where that's positioned is the most important. That gets me to thinking I really, should have my speakers spaced wider for a better sound stage up front. But with that said, this is how I've done it. We would like your feedback on how you place ceiling speakers. Are you doing this a particular angle, a degree? The particular speakers I'm using, the 900 LS, they're straight down. I can't position the tweeter, the mid-range, like you can some. So these are going to go straight down. I know there's two schools of thought, whether that to point that at the listener or to have those go straight down. I don't know how to settle that debate other than the fact my speakers only promote one way, so I don't have a choice. The other thing is some people put the actual bookshelves and mount them to have that clear timbre mark matching, but at least the Polk 900 LS are timbre match to the other Polk LSI or LSI M series I have with a radial ring tweeter. So we do feel like we're set up for success in that degree. But how would you go about this? Is there a simpler way to measure this out than I have articulated here? Maybe so. I'm not a master carpenter. I'm just using some basic skills about trigonometry, using lasers, and I do have my stud finder to know where the studs are. So that's what I'm going. That feedback would be useful to the Right Wave Audio community. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to this Right Wave Audio community, and be sure to hit that bell icon so you'll be notified the next time a video is posted. Until then, keep evolving your audio experience.